Okay, running a 10K in 50 minutes isn't about talent. In fact, it's nothing to do with talent. Anybody can run a 10K in 50 minutes. It's about doing the right workouts in the right way at the right time. And if you stay disciplined, depending on your start point and whether you're currently running a 10K in 51 minutes or 71 minutes, if you can stay disciplined and just repeat the sessions that I'm about to give you, these workouts will get you to that sub 50 minutes. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 4 interval sessions and 3 specific long runs for this sub 50 minute 10K. And most importantly, how to piece them together, how to set them apart in the week so that you don't get injured, you don't get burnt out, and you don't plateau. I'm Grantham, a coach and professional ultra runner who went from running a marathon in 4 hours and 25 minutes to running a marathon in 2 hours and 21 minutes. And within an 11-month period, I went from 3 hours and 25 for the marathon to 2 hours and 37 minutes. That's a 48-minute jump. And I did that because I started to do the right things well. And if you want to make massive improvements in your marathon time, you want a serious breakthrough, and you want to start doing the right things consistently well and get them working for you, then book a call in the description and we can see if we're a coaching fit. Interval session 1. 24 times 250 meters with 60 seconds rest in between. Now that's a lot of reps. And so pacing becomes a lot more difficult. But what we're learning to do with 24 reps, and we're learning to do with any interval session, is to pace the 10K also. There's going to be the beginning, which is perceived easier. There's going to be that middle bit where you need to dig in. And there's going to be that final bit where you really need to dig in and execute the pace that you've set out to do. And I always put the interval session midweek on the Wednesday so that I can fully recover 3-4 days later. Then I'll do the weekend Sunday specific long run. And what that allows you to do is to really push in the interval session, because you know next day for me, rest day, and then a recovery run, then an easy run, and then I'm going hard again in that Sunday specific long run. And so what we're looking for over the weeks and months, over the training schedule, is to piece together high quality interval sessions and specific long runs. And we're gonna do all that without getting injured and without running into any trouble that makes us take a back step. So 24 times 250 meters, just 60 seconds rest in between. And the job you've got is to pace the session so it feels under your control. That's the most important part. So the question could be, are these supposed to be at 5K pace, at 10K pace? Ideally, they will be at 10K pace, and the 10K pace that we're aiming for, 5 minutes per kilometer or 8 minutes per mile. But that's the goal. And if you're not yet there, and the goal is to be even quicker than that, is to be 10% quicker than that. So 24 times 250 meters, 60 seconds rest at 4:30 per kilometer. But as I said, it's all about pacing the session right now and getting that right. And so if that means you're starting at 5:15 or 5:30 per kilometer pace, that's the pace that you're starting at. And you're letting the pace, the faster pace, come to you over the weeks and months. If you're very close already to a 50-minute 10K, then we can be running those 10% quicker at 4:30 per kilometer, and you can be building that 6 kilometers of volume, 24 times 250 meters, at 10% faster than we want to run for the entire distance of the 10K. Interval session number 2. 12 times 500 meters with 60 seconds rest in between. So we're getting used to that shorter 60 seconds rest. And what that looks like is we're either walking, so we're finishing the interval and walking, or if you're on a treadmill, you're hopping off the treadmill, you may be drinking, you're getting ready for the next rep. Well, what we'll see over the weeks and months is all of a sudden that 60 seconds begins to feel longer. And what that is we're becoming better at recovering in between reps, which is a great sign of fitness and your fitness improving. And that's where your pacing comes in, but also the training plan comes in. We're starting with those shorter reps that you're able to manage with a shorter recovery. And again, for pacing 12 times 500 with 60 seconds rest in between, if you're knocking on the door for 50 minutes already, you're at 51, 52 minutes, ideally we want to be running those 10% quicker and under our control, so we're building that 6 kilometers of volume at 10% quicker than we want to run the 10K. But again, it's all about keeping this manageable, under your control. We're not striving for pace. And if you think about the extreme here, and just step back a second, makes it really easy. If you're at 50 minutes for 10K and that's your PB and that was an all-out effort, and you want to get to 40 minutes for 10K, which is gonna happen at some point, we could either train where we are at the moment, 5 minutes per kilometer or 8 minutes per mile, or we could train at what we want to run at 4 minutes per kilometer. But that's a big jump. And so what is likely to happen is we're gonna be striving for that 4 minutes per kilometer, 20% quicker, and then the risk reward goes up. We're more likely to get injured and therefore take back steps. And it's exactly the same when you're picking your paces for where you're at the moment. If we're aiming for this sub 50 minute and you're currently at 70 minutes for 10K, we need to work from there and move forward. So maybe your initial target is to run those at 65-minute 10K pace, and then 60-minute 10K pace, and then 55-minute 10K pace. And then all of a sudden, we're doing our sessions at 50-minute at our goal, at our dream time for 10K. We're doing our sessions at that pace. But again, I'll repeat it because it's important. The most important part is the session is coming to us. It's all under our control. We're not striving for pace. We're finishing the interval session feeling like we could do another 1 or 2 reps. Interval session 3. 6 times 1 kilometer with 60 seconds rest in between. So a much longer interval. We're still splitting up the 6 kilometers of volume, running fast, but they're much longer reps, 4 times as long as those 250 meter reps and twice as long as the 500 reps. So it's gonna feel harder, but we've only got 6 reps to do. And by this point, you might start to see where your strengths and weaknesses are. It might be pretty comfortable for you to do a kilometer rep at 10K pace, but for you to run 250 meters 10% quicker than that at 4:30 per kilometer pace was very difficult. And so to get both of those intervals working for us, what we would want to do is run the longer intervals at 10K pace and those shorter intervals as quick as we can, but under our control. And if that's 4:30 pace, fantastic. If it's 4:45 pace or 4:50 per kilometer pace, brilliant, because it's faster than the 10K pace and we're working with that volume of 6 kilometers. And it's only a matter of time and training before that pace nudges forward and you're able to do 24 times 250 meters in 4:30. And that's gonna make the 500 meter intervals slightly quicker. And also it's gonna make the kilometer interval quicker too. And again, we're not striving for pace. And if you look back and see the bigger picture, we're here at the moment. We're at whatever you are for 10K, 52 minutes, 72 minutes, that's your starting point. And what we're trying to do is get up to here. It's not the finish line. We're gonna be aiming further and faster in the future, but that's where we wanna get to. And if you zoom out and look at the different sessions, the progress is going to be more like this, up and down. And we're getting as much as we possibly can from the key sessions, from the midweek interval session, and the weekend long run. But if we're burying ourselves in a session and we're doing too much, we're over striving, and then your recovery is taking too long and you're not ready to hit that weekend specific long run, then all of a sudden you're in a hole and you're trying to dig yourself out of that hole because of your character, and it's leading to reduced quality sessions, meaning you're not getting from the session what is intended. Interval session 4. 3 times 2 kilometers with 60 seconds rest in between. Again, big jump from the 1 kilometer intervals, but we're only doing 3 reps. And with these sessions, again, it's all about pacing, and we're teaching ourselves to pace the 10K. That's what it's all about. And it's under our control, but we've got to also add that reality of if we cannot hold 10K pace, our intended 10K pace for 3 times 2 kilometers, then how are we gonna hold it for the entire distance of 10 kilometers? And so if you go out and do 3 times 2 kilometers with 60 seconds rest in between, and that comes out at 5:30 per kilometer, but most important, it's all under your control. It feels manageable. It feels like you could do another kilometer on the end. That's a great place to be. And you're safely moving forward in a much smarter way. Now, before I give you the long runs, those 4 interval sessions, if you were just to repeat those week after week, go back, rotate them, and just do those sessions, you would move forward. And the only thing that could change is the intensity, the pace that you're running them at. You could also, I would keep the 24 times 250 meters and keep that quality and keep the pace moving forward. But as a progression from the 500s, the 12 times 500 meters, you could do 14 times 500 meters, 7 kilometers worth of volume. And then you could do 16 times 500 meters, 8 kilometers worth of volume, and you could even get to 10 kilometers of volume. And that would make sense. And in exactly the same way, you could run the kilometer intervals and progress that from 6 times 1 kilometer to 7 times 1 kilometer to 8 times 1 kilometer, all the way to 10 to 12 times 1 kilometer. But it's again a question of, is it manageable? Are you moving towards your target? And if your target is still the 10K, I would say that you would need to go up to 8 times 1 kilometer, 16 times 500 meters to progress up to that level is a good indication of what I'm capable of, because I know I'm on fatigued legs and I know that a 10-day taper going to freshen up those legs, and then I'm ready to run the whole distance of 10K at the pace that I've been training at. And it's exactly the same on the other side. If you cannot manage 24 times 250 meters and you need to start at 10 times 250 meters, then do 12, then 14, then 16, then get to 20, it's a nice progression. And you could do exactly the same type of progression for the 500s, the 1,000 meter, the 1Ks, and the 2Ks. Long run number 1. Now, I wouldn't neglect that endurance and that time in zone 2. And so the first long run is 20 kilometers, long, slow distance. Nice and conversational in zone 2, building that aerobic base. And that's nicely giving you a lot of strength that will go into the rest of your running, especially the interval session. At this stage, when you're knocking on the door for 50 minutes for 10K, most runners are lacking in that speed. And so the emphasis is on that without neglecting that endurance, that stamina, that strength of you being able to run double distance at a much slower pace, but knowing that you can race the distance of a 10K. Long run 2. All I would do is 4-4-4. So 12 kilometers, and I would finish at 10K pace. So 4 kilometers at 10K pace. Again, if we're knocking on the door of that 50-minute 10K, that 4 kilometers is at 5 minutes per kilometer or 8 minutes per mile. And then the middle 4 kilometers, I would do 10K pace plus 10%. So again, if you're knocking on the door and you're aiming for that 50-minute 10K and you're close, that would be 5:30 per kilometer. And then that first 4 kilometers would be 20% slower than that 10K pace. So 6 minutes per kilometer. You still got to warm up for that, because you don't want any of those paces and those change up in gears and paces to be a shock to the system. And that warm up and the respect for the cool down is going to make you so much more consistent over the weeks and months. I can hear some of you screaming at the screen, hey, 12K, how can that be a long run? You can make it more difficult if you want, but the element that we're looking for here is specificity towards the 10K. So we're running 12 kilometers more than the 10K, and it's all relative to the pace that we want to be running for the 10K. If you want to put some zone 2 on the front and back of that, then you can do. You can turn it into a 20K long run with 4 kilometers on the front, nice and easy, ramping up into that first stage, and 4 kilometers on the back, where you're gradually letting the heart rate come down from 10K pace into that zone 2, and that might take 1 or 2 kilometers. Long run 3, 20 kilometers with 10 kilometers, the middle 10 kilometers at half marathon pace, or 10K pace plus 5 to 10%, depending on where you're at, depending on what feels comfortable for you right now. And again, just like the interval sessions, we've got to have all this comfortable, so we're pushing comfortably hard, but it's manageable for us. The more we strive for pace in these sessions in order to hit a certain pace, the more risky it is. If you let the pace come to you and you're gradually getting used to that quicker pace over the weeks and months, it's a much more safe and consistent way to move forward. And what that run would look like is warm up and then 5 kilometers easy, ramping up in the 4th and 5th kilometer towards that 10K pace plus 5 to 10% or half marathon pace. And then that 10 kilometers, a focused effort relative to the way that you're going to move over the ground in the 10K. And then on the back end, nicely letting the heart rate gradually come back down into zone 2 and 5K easy on the back end, and then cool down. But again, it's all about consistency, and it's all about having nice space in between that midweek Wednesday interval session and the specific long run or the long run on the Sunday, so that you've got enough time to recover. and then you've got the effort to put into that session, and then you recover in time again for the interval session, and you keep on moving forward. You're not striving for pace, it's all under your control, the risk is low, and you're enjoying your training because you're seeing pretty much week on week initially how much you're moving forward, because all of a sudden you've got an improved structure. And I promise you, if you can run 10K in 50 minutes, and I promise anybody can run 10K in 50 minutes, then it's only a matter of time before you can run that pace, 5 minutes per kilometer or 8 minutes per mile for the entire marathon. It's only a matter of training. Good luck. And if you want to start with 5K, or you're already moving on to the half marathon or marathon, here's a couple of videos on the screen that will help you with your long runs or your 5K training.